For over 400 years, Europe ruled the world. From the jungles of Africa to the mountains of Asia, from the islands of the Caribbean to the deserts of the Middle East, empires like Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands carved up the globe. Millions were conquered, enslaved, taxed, and ruled. Maps were drawn with straight lines that ignored cultures, tribes, and histories. But then, one by one, those empires collapsed. And the question is, why? How did the most powerful colonial powers on earth suddenly start giving up their empires? Not out of kindness. Not out of guilt. So what changed? The truth is, the fall of European colonialism wasn't a single event. It was a perfect storm. Let's start with World War II. By 1945, Europe was broken. Bombed. Bankrupt. Britain was in debt. France had been humiliated. The Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, they were barely holding on. These were no longer invincible empires. They were survivors. And that weakness didn't go unnoticed. In India, in Algeria, in Vietnam, in Kenya, nationalist movements saw their chance. If European powers couldn't even defend their own cities from Nazi Germany, why should they be feared anymore? Take India, for example. Britain's crown jewel. For over a century, the British Raj ruled it with iron. But by 1947, they let go. Not because they wanted to. Because they had no choice. Mahatma Gandhi's mass protests, Muslim-Hindu tensions, and a British economy on the verge of collapse. Holding on would have meant war they couldn't afford. And India was just the beginning. In Indonesia, the Dutch tried to reclaim their colony after the Japanese occupation. But the Indonesians, inspired by independence and armed with Japanese weapons, fought back. A bloody 4-year war followed. In the end, the Dutch gave up in 1949. In Algeria, France fought a brutal 8-year war to keep control. Torture. Bombings. Massacres. But the price was too high at home and abroad. By 1962, Algeria was free. Across Africa, decolonization swept like wildfire in the 1950s and 60s. Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Congo. The British and French realized something crucial: ruling unwilling colonies was more expensive than letting them go. But war and cost weren't the only reasons. There was also America and the Soviet Union. After World War II, these two superpowers dominated the globe, and neither liked old-school colonialism. The US, born from anti-imperial rebellion, pushed its European allies to grant independence. The USSR supported revolutions in Asia and Africa, hoping to spread communism and weaken Western powers. Then came the United Nations, a global platform where colonized nations could finally speak. Words like self-determination became weapons. The world was watching, and public pressure grew. And there was one more factor: the colonized people themselves. They resisted. They organized. They fought. They wrote. They marched. They refused to be ruled. From Vietnam's jungles to South Africa's townships, colonized nations didn't beg for independence. They demanded it. By the 1970s, most of the empire was gone. Flags were lowered. New countries were born. But the scars remained. Borders made by Europeans still divide people. Languages imposed by colonizers still dominate. And economies shaped by centuries of exploitation still struggle. European powers didn't give freedom. They lost it, piece by piece, because the world changed, and they couldn't keep up. Colonialism ended not with a handshake, but with blood, resistance, bankruptcy, and pressure. And yet, its shadows are still with us. Because when you rule the world for 400 years, you don't disappear overnight. This is Trivia Tales, where every empire falls, but the story lives on.